right, guys. Good evening and welcome to today's workshop. Rather, we already have Zadik on the call. I think not to waste so much time. Zadik, you can take over.
Okay, thank you very much, Amaka. Hello, guys. Welcome to another super amazing weekend party. Today we'll be having another session of our workshop. So let's look at the drive to see what we'll be discussing today. If you don't have access to this drive folder, to locate it is quite easy. Just check the Discord server under the material section. You see link to this, where you get to see the link to this drive that contains the curriculum and then the workshop. Yeah, so basically we'll be looking at Month 4's workshop. All right, let's see what we have here. Let me zoom this in. Okay. You'll be wondering why I came to week 4, month 4, right? Let's check what's in month 3. Remember in month 3, we built this quiz app. We worked on the to-do list. We have also done an image slider. I expect you guys to at least try this by yourself, right? So in today's session, we will basically be launching into month 4 workshop. And the first topic we have here on week 1 is object-oriented JavaScript. That's cool. I think Mav has had this section with us, right? Okay. So let's see what we have. Okay, the scenario is that in this workshop, students will work on building a simple JavaScript application that models a virtual library. Let me pull up my notepad so we could pick out some of those key things we be discussing. All right. So, okay, they will create JavaScript objects to represent books, authors, and libraries. During exploring object-oriented programming concepts, students will learn how to define constructors, create instances of objects, and use prototypes to add methods and properties. Wow, this is cool. All right, so let me extract the section that concerns us. So basically, we are creating a virtual library. Great. So create a virtual library. Let me copy up to this. Let me copy this guy and dump it in my notepad. Then we extract out some things. This is quite faint. Let me see if I can zoom this in. Yeah, I think this is better. All right. So basically, what I'm trying to build is a virtual library, and we'll be exploring OOP, that's object-oriented programming. They will create a JavaScript object to represent books. Okay, so we are trying to do a representation of books, authors, and libraries. All right, great. Basically, we'll be exploring object-oriented programming concepts. Okay, this is already captured here. We're looking at OOP concepts. So let me add this here, concepts. So we're looking at OOP concepts. Students will learn how to define constructors. All right. So we'll learn how to first define constructors, then create instances of objects and use prototypes. Use prototypes to add methods and properties. All right. Yeah, I think this will be fun. So basically, we're building a
Hello, Zadik. Oh, wow. Okay, so I believe Zadik is having network issues. He should be back shortly. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay, guys, if you're on the call, can you drop a message in the chat so I'll know you can see my screen and then you can hear me?
Hello, Zadik. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hello, Zadik.
Yes, Amaka, can you hear me? Hello, Amaka, can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now. Okay, your network is breaking. I don't know. Okay, I can hear you now.
Great.
I can hear you now, Zadik. Hi, guys.
All
If
right,
you
good.
can
Thank
hear
you.
me, please go ahead and drop a message in the chat so that I'm sure that you can hear me. Thank you. Hi, Zadik.
Yeah, I'm here. I want to believe you can hear me.
Hello, Zadik. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear, Amaka. Can you hear me too? I can hear you, Amaka. Can you hear me too?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, great. Okay. I'm sorry, I had little issues with my network. Okay, so basically, like we were discussing, um, in today's session, this is basically what we're trying to do, implement a virtual library. We have extracted out the key concept in this scenario, right, in our workshop. So basically, we're trying to create an object for books, authors, libraries, and then we'll explore constructors. We'll learn how to create instances of objects and then use prototypes to add um, methods and properties to objects, right? The Mav already gave us a detailed breakdown of OOP. Should in case maybe if you want to, after this session, you want to still go on and then learn more, do well to check the Top Universe YouTube channel. You see so many materials on OOP there, and then also do well to go through the materials on the GitHub so you could learn more. So let me pull up my VS Code so we'll look at what we have today. Okay, as usual, we have a blank VS Code. Let me keep these guys side by side. All right, so this is what we'll be looking at today. All right, so first off, what's OOP? Object Oriented Program. Yeah, Marv already did a good job explaining what OOP is. I'll just build on that and then throw little light on that so we could know how to build around it properly. So basically, it's like as the word or as a combination of the words implied, object-oriented programming. It's like you're just looking at everything as an object, and then, for example, a human being is an object. We could talk about a human being as an object, and then as a human being has properties, right? Human being has properties, and these properties of a human being has hands, human being has legs, and then he has you can say that okay, human being has two hands, a human being has two legs, a human being has one head. I don't think I've come across a human being with two heads. Right? Yeah, basically, human being has one head. Yeah, those are what we refer to as properties, right? Then a human being can perform certain actions, right? He can perform certain activities, certain actions. Those actions, we can term them methods, right? We can call those actions methods, right? So these methods could be a human being can walk, a human being can run, a human being can talk, right? Those are like attributes, they are like methods, they are like actions, right? So basically, what we're trying to do now is we'll look at how to define a human being using constructors, and then how to add some of those properties, those actions, sorry, those methods to the object, right? So now we're looking at the human being as an object, right? Or we could just call it, let's not call it human being. We can say maybe a car, for example. You see an object, right? A car also has tires, four tires, it has steering, then a car also can perform certain methods. There are certain actions, right? A car can move, right? So those are like actions. Those actions are what we are terming here, basically methods, right? So looking at the scenario we have today, we're talking about books, right? So even for a book also has certain properties, right? A book has certain properties. We could say a book has properties like a book has a title, right? A book is probably written by somebody, right? So it has an author, right? Yeah, it has an author. Then, if you're talking about the author object itself, the author object, now the author object also has its own property. The author has a name, probably, right? He has a name. He also has maybe his birth year, or something we could just call it DOB. That's date of birth, right? He has certain attributes about this person, right? He has a name, he has a nationality, he has a tribe, and the likes. All those are properties of this author. And remember, when we're talking about authors here, we're referring to human beings, right? Then, when you go down to the next item on our list, we're talking about libraries. When you enter a library, yeah, library definitely has a name. Yeah, a library does has a name. We have different kind of libraries, right? A library has a name. What other property can we think of? Yeah, a library has a location, right? You can find a library in certain locations, right? It has an address. That's what I mean by location. Then a library has books, right? Has it's a collection of books. It's basically these books that makes up this building library, right? Yeah, about authors. yeah, like we said, we can add nationality, right? Nationality of the author, right? So you see, we have started breaking all these concepts, right? So book, which is an object, has certain properties. That it has a title, and the book has is written by an author, right? We can even include year of publication, right? The year the book was publicated, right? The year the book was published, rather, right? So this is still another property of the book. So now talking about method, what other methods can we find here? Let's see. Talking about methods, we can now get details about this book. Get details. This is like an action, right? You want to perform certain action. This action now we want to get the details. So by getting the details of this book, I mean I want, okay, when I trigger this action, get details, I want this action to return me the name of the book, that's the title of the book, and the author of the book, and probably maybe the year the book was published, right? So let's just add, we can call this a year here, right? So let me split this. So the book has these as its properties. It has a title. Let me put this in square bracket so that, okay, it has a title. It was written by someone, and then it was published in a particular year, right? So if I trigger a certain method, a certain action called get details, probably I want this action now to return me, or to give me, in simple terms, to give me info info about a book, right? So this get details here now can be a method. So this is a method, it's an action, right? That's returning something to us. And the action is get details, is returning the details about this book, right? The same applies for the author, right? Remember, we saying this author, that's the person that wrote this book, also has a name. The author has a name, probably. He also has a date of birth, or we could call this year of birth, date of birth, year of birth, yeah, whatever you prefer to call that. He also has a nationality, right? We can even also include this same method here, right? Or this same action here called get information, get info, right? Or we could say, okay, get author details. We can call this maybe get author details. So get author details, basically what we want, when we trigger this action, when we trigger this method, should give us information, or should return details about the author, right? Details about the author. This is a method. These are properties. So same for library, right? We say library has a name. A library has a particular location that has an address. This library has certain books. There are certain books in this library. We can also trigger methods like we can also trigger method like maybe add a book. Yeah, we can trigger method like add a book. So when I trigger this method, or when I trigger this action, the what I want this method or this action to perform is just maybe add a new book to the library, right? To the library store, right? We can also trigger another method or another action called, let's see, we can call this get books, right? Yeah, get books. So when we trigger this method, basically what we are expecting is this method should return all the books, right? Should give us return all the books, or should tell us, let's put this in simple terms, should tell us all the books here, let's just call, should tell us all the books that are in the library, right? That are in the library. So now we have already defined a method for books itself, to get information about a specific book, right? A specific book. Then author to give us, get author details to give us information about this author. And then we also have two methods here: add a book, which adds a new book to the library, and then get books, which returns or tells us all the books that are found in the library, right? So now, basically, we'll be basically using these three key concepts to perform this operation. Define a constructor, find out what's a constructor, we'll create an instance, what does it imply creating an instance, we'll use prototypes to add methods and properties to, these are methods. When you're talking about methods, remember these are our methods. They are like these actions we're defining here. These are the methods we're defining, right? So when you're talking about properties to the object, these are the properties we are referring to here, right? So I believe the concept of properties and methods makes a whole lot of sense now, right? Okay, great. All right, so as usual, we'll create a blank a folder in this our the folder we've been working with. Let's call this one virtual library. Let's call it a library, virtual library. So inside of the virtual library, let's just create a file. We can create a file inside here and call this guy, let's say index.js. So basically it's virtual. So we'll not be doing HTML and CSS today, right? We'll design a virtual, it's a virtual library basically, right? Okay, so how would this go? First, this is the first thing we have to explore, define constructors. Copy this guy and bring it here, define constructor. All right, so what does it mean by defining constructors? What's a constructor in the first place? I wish this was an interactive section where somebody could, yeah, you can still feel free to drop a message in the chat what you understand by constructors, right? But in simple terms, right, they are just blueprints for creating an object. They are just blueprints. We say constructors, they are basically blueprints. These are like templates, right, for creating. So they are like, in simple terms, templates for creating objects. That's in simple terms, templates, blueprints for creating objects, right? So now there are different ways you can actually define your constructor, right? There are basically two different ways. We have the class, uh, using of the class method, and then we have function constructors. Um, I, okay, let's try the both of them so you could understand the difference, how the both of them work, right? They are quite simple to use and very straightforward. So for the function constructor, it begins with you first typing the keyword. Remember, it's a function, right? Function constructor. Then you follow by the name of the object blueprint you want to create. For instance, here, the first item we have here
Hello,
is,
Sadiq.
yes,
Okay.
can you
So
hear me?
I think your Visual Studio Code is quite tiny. If you can zoom in a bit.
Oh, okay. I don't know if this works. Is this fine?
Okay. Yeah, this is fine. Yeah, this is fine. This is fine. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So basically, the first item on our list is book, right? So can create, okay, books. This was books. So we are creating a template. That's we want to create a structure how a book should look like, right? It's just like you want to create a dummy human being, right? A model. It's just like you drawing an architecture of a house, right? So that, okay, I want to build a house. So this is how I want the house to look like. So basically, that's like, in simple terms, that's just what constructors are. Like you drawing an architecture of a house on how the house has not been built yet. Remember, you're just drawing an architecture how you want the house to look like, right? So basically, you can say, okay, we want a book now to contain a title, a title, We want the book, so these are the properties now we are dealing with here. We want the book to contain a title. We want to create a book that has the name of the author. Then it should also contain a year, and this year now refers to the year the book was published, right? And then you just trigger this. That's just it. So inside of this guy, all what you're doing is just typing this dot title. You're setting it to the title, right? So this book now should have a title, and the title should be what you pass into this function. So this book should have an author. So the author should be the name you pass into this function, author. So this book should have a year of publication. And this year now should be that year you're going to pass into this function. That is just it. That's all. On how to create a constructor using the function approach, right? So now, should in case I want to now go ahead and use this to create a book now, mind you, this is a template. Okay, this is an architecture, right? This is like a template of how I want the book to look like. These are the things I want this book to contain. So if I want more information, it's just to put comma and keep adding the information I want the book to contain here, right? And then say, okay, this book, okay, let's say maybe I add, what can I say? Okay, let's say maybe I add chapters, for example, chapters. So this book, so I can come down and say, okay, this book should contain certain number of chapters. And this number of chapters should be equal to what you call this function and pass into it. That's just what we are doing here, right? Right. But from the beginning, we just define three parameters. So let's just work with the three. This still works perfectly fine, right? Let's just work with this three, right? So what about the class approach? What about the class approach? The class approach. For the class approach, it's still very easy to write. If you go through the resources and then you did not miss the previous class, Math took us through OOP. I think you see using the class approach is also very simple. All what you need to do is you start with the keyword class, followed by the name of that template. Okay, the template here is called book, right? So put your curly bracelet. Inside the curly bracelet, you now have the keyword constructor. So inside this constructor, say, okay, I want this book to have a title. I want this book to have the name of the author. I want this book to have a year of publication, right? Have your curly bracelet. So the same thing you did here, that's what you see doing here. This book should have a title, and the title should be equal to the instance you create and give it title, right? This book is just similar structure, right? I'll just go ahead and pick these guys and then dump them here. So this is just basically using the class approach. This is using the function approach. So whichever approach you decide to use, it's fine. I think this is the ES6 approach, right? The most, yeah. This is the updated method. Yeah, I don't want to call this archaic because every approach works, right? Right. Okay, so basically, for the sake of these prototypes here, right? Let's just go with this function approach for today, right? So I can just comment this guy out. So now basically we have created a template. We have drawn the architecture. All right, let's go ahead and draw the actual house, right? Let's go ahead and draw the actual house. Let's go ahead and create the actual book. So using this approach now to create the book, it's quite very simple. It's very, very simple. All what you need to do is you now say, okay, I want to create, or okay, let's go ahead and write a book. Let me use the word write. I want to write a book. So what do I want to give? What should be the name of this book? The name of my book should be JS OOP. So this is the name of my book. I've called it JS OOP. So I'm using this template. That's I'm writing the book according to this template. So now it's going to be new followed by name of the book. name of the template, right? So the template is named book. So as when I call this book template, it means what you'll be saying is new book template, right? Then sorry, in brackets, remember we said this book, if you hover over this guy, is even going to give you, it's going to contain a title, an author, and then the year, right? So we said now this book is going to contain a title. So what is going to be the title of the book? The title of my book is JavaScript OOP. This is the title of the book. Who is going to be the author? So the author is Zaidi. So which year is this book published? 2024, right? So basically, guys, that's just it. We have succeeded in creating a new book using this template. So we have defined a constructor. We have created an instance of this, of the object. We have created an instance of this. So this is what we just covered now, these two key concepts, right? So this still works the same way you're using the class method, right? It still works the same way you're using the class method. So the next thing now, we have created a new book, right? Let's try to console log this book and see if we can see this book console.log. Let me call this guy. Okay, let me run this function. Let me navigate into the virtual library. Oh, where am I? See, city into the virtual library. Great. All right, so we are in the virtual library. I can now run node index.js. Great. You can now see this is the book, right? The title, this is the title of the book. This is the author of the book, and this is the year the book was published, right? With this. So we have succeeded in creating an instance of this book, right? Okay, guys, let's go ahead and then use prototypes to add to methods and properties to the object. So this is the object. So this is a new book we've created. So the next thing we have to do now is to use prototypes. So this was creating an instance of the object. So let me copy this guy and dump it here. So we've created an instance of the object, right? Then the next thing is we want to use prototypes to add a method. Copy this guy and dump it here. All right, so we want to use prototypes to add method. So now, what method did we define for book? We said get details, get details. So to use prototype for the functional, now remember the method of constructor we are using is the function constructor. This is a function constructor, right? So for function constructor to add the method, you now come down here and say, okay, we have the name of the template is book, right? That's the object. This is the object. The name of the template is object, right? The name is book, right? So we can now see book dot prototype, right? Dot. So we want to add this method, get details. This is the method we want to add. So okay, get details. So methods are basically functions, right? So it's a function. So we can now say, okay, function, we have the curly bracelet. So remember, we said is going to return is going to return. By return, that is going to give us info about the book, right? So we can now say, okay, return. So this function basically should return us information about the book, right? So we can now, inside this place, let me use backtick, right? So I can now put my dollar sign, right? I'll just want to write template literals. So it should return this dot title. Okay, let me just come here and say, okay, book title. I can call this book title is equal to book.title, right? And then what again are we going to return? What again should we return? Okay, let's return the name of the author and then the year the book was published. All right, that's great. So we can come here. This is a book title, and then we can say, let's put a comma, author. So this author of the book is going to be equal to this dot author. Forgetting my dollar sign here, and then we can return year of year published. Let's just call this year published is equal to, let's bring up our dollar sign, and then we can call this dot year. So we have now used prototypes to add a method to this object, right? So now how can we see this guy? So to see this guy, basically all what we need to do is just call the function, the method, right? All what we need to do is call the method, and then the method will return the method will now return the details about the book. So let's call this method in console. Let's print out the details. So basically we have what are we calling? We can say, okay, we can call this book we created. This is a book we created, right? We created the book, and then want to call this method get details. We trigger it. Remember, it's a function, right? So let me, okay, I think this is fine. Okay. Okay, let's run our function. We can use nodes to run it. Node index.js. Find the right place. Oh, we got an error that retro is not defined. Where did we make that mistake? Here, right? So this should be returned. This should be returned. So let's clear our console and run that piece again. So this is the book. You now see this method is returning the details about the book. Okay, let me comment this console we did up here. So we could see this clearer. Let me clear my terminal. Let's run this again. You can see book title, JavaScript OOP, author, and then you can see year published, right? So basically we have defined a constructor, we created an instance of that constructor, we use prototype to now add an action, which is like a method in the object, right? In the template. Remember, the template is the original object, that's the book object, right? We now used prototype to inject this method into the object, right? I want to believe that makes sense. So that's just it for the books, right? So this same approach, we can go ahead and we can still go ahead and now, okay, maybe what I want you guys to do is from your own end, after this section, you can also try to define a constructor for authors. You can create instance of the author, and then you can use prototype to inject this method or this action inside of the template and return the information about the author, right? So we can do the same for libraries, and then yeah, we can do the same for library. But there's one more action here that I want you guys to also try to play with. Add a book, right? So now you can also define a method that adds a book to the library. I don't know if, let me see how much time we have. Okay. Okay. Okay, maybe let's try that and see. Let's try that and see. Let's try that and see. Okay, let me go to the top. So that was it. So now we can do for the library. So these are library. Um, I don't need to be writing so much again. You can leverage on the code we have written. You can copy this constructor guy, use this constructor guide to create a template called library. So we've created a template called library. What are the properties we are expecting? You should have a name, location, and then books, right? So the library has this guy here, name, location, and books. So we're going to change this to this dot name, and this forms the name of the library. We're going to have this dot location, and this forms the location or the address of the library, and then we're having this dot books. This should be an empty array, right? So basically, this method add books will now be adding books, populating books inside of this guy, right? So the next thing we need to do is we have created a library object. So we have created a library object. So the next thing we want to do now is we want to add a method to add books, to add a book to the library. Remember, this is just a template. Remember, this is just a template. By template, this is just a structure of what you want the library to contain. This is not the actual library yet. It's when you create an instance of this that's when you can now see, okay, this one I've created, which is an instance of this, is the actual library, right? So inside of this library, now I want to add an action, right? So we'll call library as usual, library.prototype. So prototype, and then want to add this action called add book. Let's just bring it here. Add book. And then remember, these actions, called methods are functions, right? Like we said earlier. So then we're going to say, okay, this is going to add, right? So meanwhile, this function is receiving the name of the book you want to add to the library. So it's receiving a parameter, which is like the name of the book or the book you want to add to the library, right? So we're going to have, and then this books is an array. So to add to an array, that's you push, you use the push method, right? So you can say, okay, this dot books, inside these libraries, there's a books array, sorry, push this new book, this book, that when you call this method and pass in a book, push that book inside the library, right? So now we can remember we say we still have another get books, right? Get books. We can have, okay, our library dot proto dot add this method called get books. This method is also an action, remember? Action, right? So, and remember, those actions are functions like we said earlier. So this guy now, remember this guy is telling us the books. So this one is like returning information about the library, right? So it's basically returning information about the library. So we can say, okay, you should re, return, return this dot books. So this is an array, right? So we need to map the array and then display individual book that's inside the array. So books will now map that array. By mapping, it's like you want to loop through, you want to go through that array of books and then be bringing them outside one after the other. It's like bringing a box and then dipping your hands inside a box one after the other to remove the content of the box, right? That's basically what this map is trying to do to this array. This map is like dipping a hand inside a box, picking each book one after the other, right? And then returning it. So we can basically return the entire book, or can return a specific property about the book, right? We could return something like, maybe, remember this book has the title, right? We just return basically a title of the book, right? Um, so yeah, don't worry, let's try this out. And then we can still come back and revamp this, refactor this if there is any need, right? Okay, so basically this is just it. We've created the template. We added some actions. Those are like methods into the template. Remember this guy, we said this one is to return the books in the library. That's basically what this guy is doing. So now, yeah, we can go ahead now and create an instance of the book. So we want to create a book inside this library. So we want to create an instance of the book, right? Oh, sorry, of the library. I mean, we want to create an instance of the library. So what I mean is, we want to create a library, basically. So now to create a library, create an instance of the library. That's want to build our library now. So let's keep it in a variable and call this new library. New lib, yeah. New lib. That's okay. So now remember what we did above here is just to use the new, create an instance of the original book, right? So it's the same thing happening. We just use new, create an instance of library. This is the library itself, right? So now close this guy. So remember we said this library is expecting certain information. It's expecting the name of the library. What should we call this? What should be the name of this library? We can call it map library. Hope map is not on this call. Yes, it's not. Sorry, boss. So we can call this, the name of this library, map library, right? Um, so where's the location of this library? So we now have to pass a location of this library here. So which is going to be like the second parameter. So the location of this library is on, this library is located on top universe. Top universe. That's where you can find this library, right? So, but for the books, which is like this guy here, we'll be injecting these books inside this library dynamically. What we just did is we just created a library. So we have a library now, an empty library without books inside. So the next thing is do is, okay, let's go to the market and buy some books, buy books, buy books. So that's like, okay, let's not buy books. Let's write our book and put inside this library. Write a book. So let's write a book. Let's keep it in a variable. We can call this book one. Yeah, let's just call it book one. I don't like the word book one. Let's call it JS book. I don't like that. Let's call it OOP. OOP book one. Yeah, OOP book one makes more sense. So OOP book one. Remember this book we want to create. We are creating an let me comment this guy out so that no command start giving us plenty things in the console. We're just creating a book using this template. Remember, for you to create anything, you need a template. For you to build any house, you need what do you call that again? An architectural diagram, right? So now you need this. We are creating using this template, right? So can the new book, we'll say, okay, this is new. The template we are using is called book. What does the template expect? The template expects a title, author, and then year, right? So what's going to be the title of the is OOP book. Book one. This is the title. Sorry. Book one was second parameter is expecting the author and then the year. So the author, let's give Amaka write this book for us, right? So when is she going to publish this book? So okay, let's say she published this book in 2023, right? So now we have created a book. We have a library, but this book is not inside this library. So we need to put this book inside this library. How can we put this book inside this library? We can put this book inside this library using this method here we created. Remember, we injected this method inside of this library. See, library, we inject it. So this is like a part of this now, right? But if you're using maybe a class, okay, I erase that out. It's quite straightforward and easier, right? So I'm not going to cover that. Do well to go to the Top Universe YouTube channel and look for that video on OOP that the last one of the session Marv took us, and then you get a better feel, a good understanding of using the class approach. And then in case you want to read more, still check the GitHub for the resources, right? He also created, right? So you discover that using the class approach is quite simple and straightforward. You're not doing all those prototype and the likes, right? So do well to go there, right? So yeah, we injected this art book into this library. How much time do we have? 5 minutes left. So what we need to do now is just to add this book inside that place, right? It's quite simple. So all what we need to do is call the library we've created. We created a library called new LIP. That's our library, right? The library is stored inside this variable, new LIP. So this new LIB, we now want to put a book inside. So the method to call is what? Add books. Add book. So this add book, remember this add book takes a book. That's a name of a book. So we created a book. This is the book we created, or we wrote a book rather. This is a book. Not we, Amaka wrote this book for us. So this book now is what we are now injecting here as a parameter. So now we have successfully used this method, this add book method, to send this book Amaka wrote to us into the library we built using this template that we got from an architect, right? All right, so now how can we get the information in that book? How can we even be sure that this book was sent? To be sure that this book is inside the library, remember there's a method we also injected called getBooks. This method returns every book inside this library. So all what we need to do is let's call that method, right? Let's call it inside console. Let's put it inside console. We can say, okay, the name of the library we want to what the name of the library we want to access is what's the name of the library? New, yeah, dot get books. So let's trigger this guy and see if he's going to return positive. I think if everything goes well, that should return positive. So let's clear the terminal and be ready. Voila, you can see this book, right? It returned the title of the book. Why is it returning only the title? Because we say it should return dot title. If I remove this dot title, let's run this again. Now it is returning the entire details about the book. So you can return just the title, you can return only the author. So if you want just the author, you can say okay dot author, right? So let me clear this guy, run this again, you can see this is the author returned. So guys, basically that's it. I believe you're able to learn something in today's workshop. Just a quick recap. We dealt with constructors, like I mentioned, two different ways of defining your construct. We have the function constructors, and then we have the class-based constructors, which we define at the beginning of the class. Like I said, you can check the YouTube channel. We have a video, recorded video of one of the classes Marv took us on OOP using the class approach, and then there's a lot of resources that he has also prepared. Go through that resource, you get to understand more about the class approach of it. Then we now We also created instance, and by creating instance, it's just like you pick, you're building on a template that you have designed, right? After you build on that template you have designed, you want to put in certain methods. We now use these prototypes to inject certain method into this template that we designed, right? So these methods can help you to perform different actions, like we explained in the beginning of the class. You can have methods to return certain details. You can have certain methods to perform certain actions, like adding of books and the likes, right? So yeah, guys, basically that will be it for today's workshop. It's exactly a minute to nine. So if you have questions for me, kindly feel free to drop them in the chat section. Thank you so much, guys. And if you enjoyed the section, please drop a message. And if you have recommendations for me, please do well to drop them so that the next workshop will be more awesome. Sorry, I didn't play any music for you guys today, but in the next weekend vibes, we'll definitely party. So if you have questions, please room. Amaka, you see there? Hello, Amaka, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you. I heard the
Yeah,
party
so
said you play music next week. So no problem.
yeah, thank
All
you.
right, guys.
It's always it's a party weekend.
It's a coding class, not a party class. But that's fine. So guys, if you don't have any questions for Cedric, that's fine. You can have your question in the group. I see Precious, you said you came late. The video is on YouTube, so you can always rewatch the class. With that being said, have a lovely evening, morning, or afternoon. Thank you, Zedik. Please remember Zedik will play music next week. Invite your friends. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.